Welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. One of the most amazing things about this hobby is the journey you could go on as a collector and investor. And you know what? There's no one method, tactic, or strategy that's absolutely perfect. And if you ask any collector, any real collector, if they have any regrets or if they've made any mistakes in their collecting career, I guarantee you 100% they could think of at least one mistake that they have made. And, on this channel, I would never say the word 100%. But when it comes to things like this, I guarantee you it's 100% that a true collector or true investor has made at least one mistake that they regret in this hobby. But you know what? Those regrets and those mistakes can be way more valuable than any of the good deals they've made. Because if you learn from your mistakes and you learn from your regrets, you will continue to go down the right path in this hobby by learning. If you've only made mistakes and you've never learned from your mistakes and you continually make the same poor decisions, you will only continue down a bad path and you will find this hobby to be very hard. And then as you're walking down that road, if you continue to make mistakes, you'll constantly see different roadblocks come across your way. And normally in this hobby, there's a lot of gatekeeping that happens, and that's the truth. It's not really a secret. It's nothing new in this hobby too. Gatekeeping has happened forever, and you can think about just the grading market in particular. When you think about gatekeeping in this hobby, grading is definitely something that comes to the forefront of most people's thoughts. There was a long period of time where people were artificially trying to keep population reports at PSA low and not have a huge amount of cards graded. And guess what, guys? If you did go out and decide to grade a lot of one card, you would be sure to get a mean message from somebody, letting you know, hey, stop grading all these cards. But, that was a form of gatekeeping that happened in the past. We don't really see it anymore because now we're just seeing this huge explosion at PSA of graded cards. But even then, gatekeeping this hobby, there's a lot of little subtleties that have always happened too. And yeah, there's always been a few of them, call them the masked puppeteers and the people behind the curtain, and you probably don't even really realize it's happening. You think about how many eBay auctions or just auctions in general have had some real serious shill bidding that have happened forever. Shill bidding is as Pokemon as it gets, as sad as it is to say. It's the truth. It's a long, reoccurring thing in this hobby. And, we see it all the way up to modern stuff with PWCC auctions. Yeah, we're seeing it, try to change a little bit, but it's always been there. It's still there. And, you think about buyout groups. And, now the big thing is private discords. But, think about private discords. Before discords, there was WhatsApp. And before WhatsApp, there was GroupMe. Do you guys even remember GroupMe? Yeah, that's how long this shit's been going on for. It's nothing new. It just happened to be that the platform now is Discord. But this stuff has always gone on. And then, yeah, you always have, your different Patreon groups. And yeah, as the hobby grows, there's a little bit of gatekeeping because now you see a little bit more of the information be kept behind paywalls, where, maybe paywalls wasn't such a thing. Maybe it was more little more tight-knit stuff, like maybe you had your E4 groups and, hope a thread didn't get out of control and then that thread just gets locked for a different reason. But, there's always been certain narratives that have been portrayed in the hobby, and it doesn't matter what side you're on. There's even right now today, what are the two big narratives you always hear people? You always have people more or less on one of two sides. People are all about vintage or people are all about modern. And you always hear the same narrative, and you could instantly tell what side of the fence each person's on. When you have people that are all about modern, you'll always hear the argument. Wait for all these PSA slabs that come back. There's tons of vintage cards being graded right now. The vintage market will crash. And then you have the opposite. You have all the people that are on have huge collections of vintage cards, and they're really anti-modern. And then you'll hear the argument for modern. Modern will be printed to oblivion. Modern's going to crash. Pokemon's just going to like drive down the price. So you always will have these narratives, and it's just a matter of who is saying the narrative. What are their real goals? What are their strategies? Why are they saying certain narratives? And in the past, for me, I've always found it very easy to very quickly identify those narratives. Always more or less white noise in the background. So I didn't really focus on those narratives too much because, you always knew they were out there. And that's the point I'm kind of trying to express, is that different narratives, different sort of gatekeeping, different types of roadblocks that block a lot of people's journeys have always been around in this hobby. And yeah, maybe this video is coming off as these things were negative, but I never even really considered them to be negatives, as bad as that sounds, because I've always just been able to ignore them so easily. The only difference is after a while, I started to surround myself with a lot of people that had just, the same thoughts and, the same strategies and the same collecting goals and the same investment goals as me. And, as you surround yourself, you don't call them yes men. It's not really the same. I think of a yes man as something different, somebody that always agrees with you. But I was surrounding myself with people that had the same opinions, and they weren't saying yes to me to make me happy, and I wasn't saying yes to them to make them happy. It was just a matter of you surround yourself with people that are like-minded, and you were watching what other people were doing, people were watching what you were doing, and you were being successful together. And I really wanted to do my best, and that was one of the huge reasons this channel exists, was to sort of try to separate myself from that and kind of start, I don't call it start fresh, but start with a new, different set of eyes where I could really look at the hobby as a whole, do my best, try to give advice that at least has worked for me in the past. To say whatever I'm telling you is going to work for you would be the biggest disservice I can do to you. And I've said it at the very beginning of the video, there is no one method, tactic, or strategy that is 100% perfect. That there is not those strategies. They don't exist, But I hope I could start to give you the tools, and you can start to make your own strategy. Start to hear different sides of arguments. And, that's one of the things I try to do on this channel too, is I do my best to argue both sides of every argument, because I don't think there's any clear-cut answer for any question. I always think that the right answer or the correct answer always lies somewhere in the middle, and that's always the gray area. And the gray area sometimes can definitely be the toughest to get to. And that's why sometimes you'll hear me go off on these videos and try to have discussions with you guys and do my best to work my way to these gray areas. And oftentimes, you'll run into a lot of these gatekeepers at all the points of entry for these gray areas, because they really don't want people to get there. And yeah, I understand that this video is coming off pretty cynical, and that's not really what I mean for it to do, but I just want you guys to, a very important tactic or a very important strategy to help you grow in this hobby is just be aware that gatekeepers exist, and start to really open your eyes and start to recognize all the signs of gatekeepers and people that are doing their best to hold you back. And, there's the obvious, right? Like where somebody would just more or less come straight out and try to attack you. But then there's the other people that will do their best to destroy whatever you're saying and try to make you look stupid or undereducated, or you don't understand the market, or you don't understand how things really work. And they'll ignore everything you're trying to say and just try to nitpick one sentence or one word, and they'll take that one sentence or they'll take that one word and they'll run with it as a whole for your entire thought process, for your entire conversation, for everything you're trying to do. They'll just take that one little piece and they'll run with it. So I just want you guys to be mindful that this stuff exists. And as you're continuing to grow in this hobby, and I always say it, I don't care if you've been here for a day, if you've been here for a month, or if you've been here for years, you should constantly just not keep your head on a swivel. That's a little too dramatic, but at least keep your eyes open and really start to see the warning signs as you're continuing down the path. Because as you continue to get deeper into the hobby, whether you want to meet these gatekeepers or not, they will eventually start knocking on your door and they'll rear their ugly heads. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. I think one of the biggest farces that are kind of going on in the hobby right now is that thought of that Pokemon is somehow corrupted, that there's corruption in Pokemon, and Pokemon has somehow been taken over by the investors and all the money in the hobby and all these different narratives that are now being portrayed to make it look like corruption. And people are taking individual news stories and, little segments of the hobby and trying to build this new narrative of almost like tons of corruption going on in the hobby. When it comes to investing, I'm going to let you in on a secret that is not a secret. Investing is not new to this hobby in the slightest. The only huge caveat is that the dollar amounts have changed so drastically and have grown exponentially. But when you tear back, investing in Pokemon and you start pulling back the layers and you really look at the core of what Pokemon investing is, that core has always been around. It's nothing new. So sure, investing, we're shedding a little bit more light on it as of recently because I think it's at the forefront of a lot of people's conversations, a lot of people's thoughts, just because dollars are important to a lot of people. But when you really break it down and you look at it, like I said, from its core, all those foundations and all those fundamentals in Pokemon investing have always been there, and they haven't really changed too much. As you're going along your Pokemon journey, just use every tool, every tactic, everything you've learned, everything you've acquired, everything you're going to continue to acquire along the journey. Just continue to use all those tools to help you along the way. And it doesn't matter what path you take at the end of the day. You can take the path less travel, you could take the path more travel, you could take the easy path, you could take the hard path. You can grind, you can go uphill, you can go downhill, you can do anything. But at the end of the day, do whatever works for you. And, that's really the secret. It's what works for you. And like I said at the beginning of the video, no one's path and no one's journey is 100% identical. Everyone's is a little bit different. And you gotta find out what works for you. Because when you discover that, and you get more or less like an awakening of what works for you, that's where you're really going to start to see this hobby become so much easier for you. And, the last video I put out, just for a thought, is I talked about how I was a little curious that some people would decide to, sell their large collections as a whole instead of piecing it out and, trying to maximize profit there. And I was amazed at the different thought processes different people had. I think some of it fell a little bit on deaf ears, but I think a lot of people too were defensive too, in the sense that why would anybody want to spend the time to put the work in to get more money for their product? And I think the confusion was some people started to take that as low dollar amount cards. And I think that video might have got away from me from the topic of what I was trying to talk about. What I was really trying my best to do was focus on high, big dollar amount collections. And I wasn't talking about like super cheap cards. I was talking about cards that at, a high grade would sell for pretty high dollar amounts. Those could be hundreds or thousands of dollars. And when I was talking about collections that involve sealed product, I was talking about booster boxes that were over 5 figures. So I think that's where that video might have got away a little bit from me, is where people just couldn't understand why people would want to take the risk. But what I was trying to state too in that video was, yes, while there is always going to be a risk if you're going to decide to go that route and piece out your collection and sell it individually, and yeah, the market could change, very quickly on you. What I was really trying to express was that people who had acquired some of these really large, especially when it came to vintage sealed product collections, the people I was really trying to talk about were people that have accrued that collection a long time ago and had the ability to sit on it for a super long time. So if they had the ability to sit on it, even 3 years ago when prices were drastically lower, and they didn't want to sell it then at prices 3 years ago, and they decide to make that transition to start selling product at today's prices, my thought process is, okay, well, do I really think that their risk in piecing out their collections and having their cards graded and sitting on trying to sell this expensive stuff, do I see a retrace for a lot of this product from some of the lows where they decided to still continue to sit on the collection and ride it through? And that's what I was trying to say. Maybe it came off wrong. Maybe people took it the wrong way. They ran with it in ways that I wasn't really prepared for them to. And I just want to, clarify a little bit of that. But hey, listen, continue on your journey. I hope you guys are very successful. I hope you guys do great. I hope you guys do better than me. I hope you guys do better than anyone else out there. At the end of the day, the person you should care about most is you. The person you should worry about most is you. You don't got to worry about anybody else. Don't worry about the white noise. But hey, listen, if you somehow made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Go down below, hit that subscribe button. Other than that, hit the like button, and I'll catch you on the next video.